today. And you should have a copy of the summary as well, and those documents can also be found on the House Committee webpage under the Documents tab. We'll begin this morning first by recognizing our Sergeant at Arms with us today, B.H. Powell, in the back there. Thank you, sir, for being here and helping us out. Thomas Terry, also in the back of the room. Thank you, sir. Nina Lage is here with us in the front. Thank you. And of course, Terry McCraw, thank you for your service and for helping us out today. There are no House pages. We'll begin with the next item on the agenda, which is House Bill 770. Now, members, this is a PCS. This is the same bill that was heard for discussion only in our last meeting. As you can see, there have been several changes to the bill. We will recognize Representative Davis and Representative Cleveland to go through the changes and go through the PCS. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Excuse me, as I said last time, the primary sponsors of this bill were going to meet and review and entertain motions that would be presented by the committee. We did that along with staff. Representative Harrison should be pleased because we did definitely two of the amendments she requested and sort of did a third one that she requested. And we were trying to, there was a multitude of suggested language, not only with the committee but outside the committee. And what we were trying to do was to keep this bill streamlined and to the point that we were trying to make, and not turn it into an omnibus bill with other things that were outside the scope of the bill. So basically, once again, very briefly, what the PCS would do, it would require cast vote records to be created. A cast vote record would be defined as a de-identified electronic record of voters' choices for each ballot item. The cast vote records would be electronically created on a ballot tabulation machine. The PCS would also provide that cast votes records are a public record, which means that would authorize access to cast vote records when a public records request is filed. It would also require a voting system to support the creation of a cast vote record effective January 1, 2024 for all counties that use voting equipment capable of creating cast vote records, and July 1, 2024 for all other counties that applies to elections held on or after that date. As you recall, there were several counties that do not presently have that equipment and could have run into a problem with being able to comply with the January 1 deadline. So an extra 6 months was thrown in there so that they could comply. Except for that, everything in the bill would be effective January 1, 2024, and I ask for your support of the bill. Thank you.
Okay. We'll open it up for members' discussion and questions. The first hand I saw was Representative Warren. Representative Warren, you wish to be recognized?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank the bill sponsors for how diligently they presented this bill and the concept, and also like to recognize Representative Harrison for the many observations she made and the contributions she did towards the bill. I do have a question. Do we have any plans for any type of appropriations for counties or the Board of Elections for the equipment that might be needed to be purchased or modified going forward? And then at the appropriate time for a motion, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Would you like to? Question for staff?
Yes.
Could staff address the question regarding the appropriation?
Mr. Chair, I believe whether or not there was an appropriation would be a policy decision that would be part of the budget. So whether or not that is there or not, as we understood the discussion last week, there were only 3 counties that were not able to comply immediately, and those were Swain, Watauga, and Graham. And so I think the question becomes, where are they? If there were any appropriations to be had. The rest of this should be just general public records law.
Thank you.
Care to add anything? Okay. I saw Representative Harrison next, and then Representative Dahl. We'll recognize you after Representative Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the bill sponsors for accommodating many of our concerns that we expressed. I really appreciate it. That was terrific. Just a couple of quick follow-ups, especially to Representative Warren's question, because I asked this last week as well about the appropriate budget that was presented last night is actually the budget for the next couple of years. It doesn't look like there's any money, definitely not any extra money for any administrative burden that's on the state board or on the county boards. In fact, it doesn't actually even look like there's any money in there for the extra burden that Senate Bill 747 will impose on those two entities or a multitude of entities. So I appreciate that, and I hope that that's going to change. I don't know how, since it's a conference report, but the main concerns that I still hear expressed have to do with confidentiality of voters. There's some thought that there are some precincts that are small enough that you actually might be able to identify the voter based on the cast vote record. This is all outside of my area of expertise, so I might be misstating, but so you have de-identification language in here, and maybe it's for the staff. Is that flexible enough that they can accommodate those situations where there is a very small voting population in a precinct?
Okay, thank you for the question. Staff is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as drafted, if we are talking about an actual voted ballot, there is language that would require that to be de-identified so that anyone who did have access to that voted ballot could not identify that voter. With respect to the cast vote record, it is a public record. It would be the tabulator that is counting the ballot that is creating this cast vote record. That tabulator's cast vote record is a public record. There is a possibility that in some very small elections with very small geography, having only 1 or 2 voters in an assigned precinct, that it would be possible to know those 2 voters how they voted, or that 1 voter how they voted. There is no accommodation there, because as we understood the cast vote record, the idea was so that it was kind of you can follow the numbers trail.
Yes, follow up?
I appreciate that, because I didn't really understand the difference. And so it sounds like there might be a lingering concern about that. And since this is taking another dip in rules and we have some time in between, that maybe y'all could consider some language that might clarify that so that you couldn't actually identify the voter in those certain situations. I know that's a concern I keep hearing raised, but I'm grateful for your help and support and accommodating our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dahl, you're recognized.
I just need some clarification on, well, I was going to ask what this bill, so what are we talking about? Are we talking about the tabulator, the things that are posted at the end of voting in Wake County? I mean, what are these things that we were talking about? I'm really confused.
Staff is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I will attempt this one, but because I've never actually seen one, I am kind of just going with how I understand what is happening. So today, we have tabulators that kind of do a pre-count of the ballot, and then we have a canvass after the actual election day where the county board and the state board certify that this is the official count and issue certificates of election. This would be something that happens as the votes are being put into the tabulator. That tabulator would individually collect all of the votes cast in a particular race, an election contest. That would then be an electronic document that the tabulator is storing on election day. At some point, it would be removed from that tabulator so that the tabulator could be used the next time to do the same thing. The county board would then have a public record of what was taken off of that tabulator with respect to each election contest. It is an electronic document that's basically like an Excel spreadsheet saying that there were 47 votes cast in this particular election. 12 of them were cast this way, 25 of them or 25 of them were cast this way.
Yes, Representative Davis would also like to address that.
If I could, Ms. Churchill, what you're saying is the tabulation, which is a public record, will identify how many votes were cast. And it might be X amount for this Republican candidate, this for Democrat candidate, whatever, but it does not identify who the voter was in each one of those votes.
Yes, sir, that is my understanding. I think the conversation about the secrecy of the ballot is if you have a precinct that happens to have 1 or 2 voters assigned to a particular municipality in that precinct, those voters are entitled to vote in the municipal election. If there are 2 ballots cast in the election contest for mayor, one going for candidate A, one going for candidate B, you obviously know those 2 voters in that precinct, one cast A, one cast B. Or if everybody cast B, you know how those 2 voters voted.
Follow up, Representative Dahlman?
Well, I guess what I'm confused is in Wake County, at the end of the night, there is a tabulation printed. So is that different than the tabulation at the end of election night?
Staff
Is it
is
the
ready.
same?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how Wake County is producing that tabulation that you're seeing at the end of the night on election night. But yes, ma'am, I do believe that that is something different. What I understand of how they do unofficial elections is that it is a combination of the ballots cast that, up to that point. And that is the tabulation you're seeing that comes across the screen at the end of the night or shows up on the state board's website. That is something that has been manually entered by an election official.
And Representative Davis would like to address that as well, and then we'll
Thank you.
recognize you for another.
And Ms. Churchill, as I understand, whatever is done in Wake County, while it may give you tabulation of the number of votes that were cast, it does not identify who the voters are.
Okay. And you had a follow-up, Representative Dahlman? Okay. Other members of the committee, Representative Weiler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little bit of clarification on the appropriations. Maybe this will solve it or not. If my recollection from the old days, the county paid a lot of the expenses of the election, office space, and I think some salaries and so forth. But isn't there discretionary money? This doesn't sound like a lot of money for 3 counties out of 100, or I don't know what the amount would be, but it doesn't sound like a lot. But wouldn't it be some discretionary funds, either in the state board, the state director, or the counties that have discretionary funds that could possibly help with that? Any clarification on that?
Do you want to address that? If not, we'll see if staff wants to try to answer that.
Mr. Chair, I'll start with the general law, which is county commissioners are responsible for funding county elections. It is not the state that pays those expenses. With respect to voting equipment in the past, there have been some instances over the years where the state has made changes to the requirements for voting equipment where HAVA funds coming from the federal government have been used to fund those expenses for the counties. I am unaware, I simply don't know the answer as to whether or not there might be any additional HAVA funds out there that the 3 counties could use. We're happy to ask and make some inquiries to see if that's the case.
Follow-up? No, sir? Other members of the committee, questions or comments regarding the PCS? We did have 2 members in the back of the room sign up to speak. The first one's Bob Phillips. Mr. Phillips, welcome to the House Elections Law Committee. We're going to recognize you for a time not to exceed 2 minutes. And if you would, please identify yourself and any organization that you're
sir.
with for the record. Thank you, sir.
Yes, my name is Bob Phillips, and I'm with Common Cause North Carolina. And I will commend the bill sponsors as well for the work they've done on this bill. I've got a lot on my plate, and I appreciate the fact that I'm not having to worry too much about this bill. Obviously, Common Cause is all about more transparency in government. It's always a good thing. To the extent that this might provide some of that and also provide, as some have said, a little more confidence in our elections process, that's a good thing. What I would just say is what's already been discussed, and that is looking to try to make sure that there is that privacy protected of a voter in those precincts. I know Representative Warren, think about rural Rowan County. Maybe there's a precinct there where there's just a few voters. I know none of you all want to have where people can figure out how people voted. I realize this bill's on a fast track going from here to rules and then on the floor. Hopefully you all can work with the department and figure out something. I don't have the solution here for you, unfortunately. But again, appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. And last, we have Mr. Paul Cox. If you would, sir, please identify yourself and the organization you're with, and you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Paul Cox, the General Counsel for the State Board of Elections. I want to echo all the thanks to the bill sponsors for accommodating the suggestions that the administrators of elections have made about the bill. We do think it's a significant market improvement from the initial draft. To answer some of the committee members' questions, the issue with cast vote records is that in some precincts that you have overlap of election jurisdictions. So you might have a county commissioner district that only three or 20 voters in that precinct vote for that county commissioner. This can happen not just in municipal elections, it can happen also in primaries where you have only a few Democrats in one precinct or you only have a few Republicans in one precinct. So using the cast vote record and seeing which contests were voted on by each ballot, you could use that and other information that's publicly available to identify how a particular voter voted. Would also be the case in general elections. Now, a lot of our general elections now, and even number of years, include some municipal elections. So those municipal election boundaries are going to have small numbers of voters in a precinct potentially. So it would be an issue in each election. The State Board has suggested some language changes to the chair and to the Rules Committee. Happy to discuss those with the bill sponsors just to guarantee that we're able to address that ballot privacy issue. And we look forward to working with you all on that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Yes, Representative Harrison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate those comments from the State Board, and I just wanted to echo those to the committee, to the bill's primary sponsors, because this issue related to confidentiality keeps coming up, and transparency is great, but we don't want to disclose the specific voter information. So I hope y'all will be able to work together maybe before rules, because it sounds like the language that the State Board has proposed is a pretty simple fix. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from members? If not, then Representative Warren, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I make a motion for a favorable report for the PCS for House Bill 770, unfavorable to the original, with a referral to rules.
Thank you, sir, for the motion. Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion carries. Members, that's the only bill we have, so the meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Ayes do have it. Motion carries. Members, that's the only bill we have, so the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.